in spite of the pain and the heartbreak and the deep grief that this has caused in many churches, I mean, there is a real hope that out of this, a real sense of new life and new spirit. I'm looking forward to it in the United Methodist Church myself, that for all of us, it will be, kind of a return to our roots, basically, of who we really are, and a new sense of inclusion, freshness, and an energy moving forward. I mean, that's the real hope.
Welcome to the More Than Sunday podcast, where we tackle tough questions about our faith that many people have but are often afraid to ask. I'm Rohini Drake, and I'm on staff here at First United Methodist Church, Richardson, and each week I'm joined by two guests who'll help us jump in and tackle some of these tough questions. This week, we're asking the question, what does it look like when my church has to start over? We're hoping that this episode will be helpful for anybody out there that is going through the disaffiliation process that's happening right now in the United Methodist Church, or just for anybody who has questions about what the future of the United Methodist Church looks like as we come through these disaffiliations. And so I'm glad this week to be joined by Pastor Vic Casad and our own Pastor Clayton Oliphint to answer some of these questions and just have this conversation. So thank you both for being here today. And Clayton, before we get into the episode, I was wondering if you could just kind of set up some background about what disaffiliation is and where we're at currently.
Right. And it's a complex question. There are 30,000 United Methodist churches across the United States. And for about the last 50 years, there's been an intense kind of building disagreements about how do we see human sexuality. That's been the presenting issue. There are a lot of other issues involved as well. Some have to do with structure and power and money and all these kinds of things. But in 2019, the General Conference established a procedure by which churches could have a window of opportunity to disaffiliate if they chose to do so. Most churches will never have this vote, but some churches have chosen to, and Texas is kind of the epicenter of this, at least so far. And so that's why I think maybe around here we've heard more about it. And I know people who have family members or friends whose churches voted, and they want to know, well, are we going to vote? And not every church votes. Our church council was very clear unanimously that we're a United Methodist Church and we're going to continue to be a United Methodist Church, and that we were not interested in going through a process or voting. But some churches are, and so it's very painful. And so to date, about 2,100 churches have disaffiliated out of the 30,000 churches. And in our North Texas area, we have 280 churches, and we had 41 churches disaffiliate. In our district, the Dallas Metro District, we have 75 churches, and we had 4 disaffiliate. And so this is a painful reality that our churches are going through, and it's something that no one wants to see, and it's like families being ripped apart in a divorce. And so you have that kind of feeling in churches that are voting, and they're not voting to leave, but it's a 50-50 vote, and then everybody's mad at each other. So it's caused a lot of angst in churches, and so this is a real thing. And I've talked to people. I know we've talked to people whose churches have been through this or going through this, and it's a sad reality that we're in right now. And my brother-in-law, and full disclosure here, my brother-in-law, Vic Casad, is pastoring a church, starting a new church that's born out of churches that disaffiliated, and the remnant of members who didn't want to do that. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your experience with this? And Vic was a district superintendent prior to this time, and as retired and flunked retirement, was brought back in to start this new church. So why don't you tell us about your experience?
Yeah, sure, Clayton. Thanks. Rohini, thank you. So I am a retired United Methodist pastor from the North Texas Conference, and I've been retired kind of a couple of years, I guess, and knew pretty much from the beginning of retirement that I would spend some time, if I was asked, to do interim kind of work when needed. So I've had a couple of other interim positions of churches, which were actually quite fun and really engaging, just to get them through a period of time of transition. And then I was given this opportunity a little over a month ago, after what then was First United Methodist Church of Maybank had their vote. And as you have said, when a church votes, there is pain and anguish afterwards. It cannot help but be. When you set yourself up for a vote, you have winners and losers. And in this case, the losers were the United Methodist group. So that church has disaffiliated, and officially will disaffiliate at the end of the month. That's the time when the cutoff is. But so this little remnant of folks gathered together in an old dance studio on Market Street in Maybank, Texas. And it just so happened that Owen Ross from our conference, who directs the Center for Church Development, was there to just kind of commiserate with them and just grieve with them and just maybe, think about the future. So in the midst, there was, from the stories that I have been told, this was like December the 4th of last year, there was a lot of tears, a lot of sadness, kind of a hopelessness, kind of, what do we do? What do we do? We're, our church has abandoned us, kind of thing. But then all of a sudden, this energy started swelling about, well, could we start a new church? And with Owen's kind of, prodding, you can, or it's possible. And so that immediately flipped and turned what was a sad, grieving moment into one of those kind of laughter through tears things. And this new energy swelled, and it swelled very fast. So I was asked, and privileged to do so, by the district superintendent in the East District, Cassie Wade, if I would serve as kind of an interim planter. I think the role interim is probably not the best of words, but I am part-time, and I'm temporary. Hopefully there will be a full-time planter coming soon, but in this meantime, in this embryonic time for this new congregation, I'm very privileged to be there, and it is a lot of fun. Because these are people with a new vision, a new vitality, a new clear understanding of what it means to be United Methodist, claiming it and are proud of it. They have a true sense of what it means to be an full inclusive congregation that welcomes everyone. I don't know if you remember, several years ago, the United Methodist Church had this national-wide slogan. They spent millions of dollars in research and in market testing to come up with this big TV marketing plan. Open hearts, open minds, open doors, the United Methodist Church. and everybody was, oh, well, that's who we are. That's great. We love that. And so this was all over the news and print, and churches were putting it on their signs and in the front, and it was really good. Then all of a sudden it was taken off. It just stopped. And everybody, well, what was that for? Well, they got accused of false advertising.
Right.
Our doors were not always just open to everybody, and that was called out. So there's this new sense, now at this church, who, by the way, because they had their beginnings on Market Street, they have decided to call themselves Market Street United Methodist Fellowship, which will be changed on Sunday, this coming Sunday, March 26th, to Market Street United Methodist Church. It will charter. And so their new kind of mantra is open hearts, open minds, open doors, and this time we really mean it.
I love that.
So
I love that.
It is so it's a special time for all of us. It's one of those, and for a pastor to be in the midst of a group that has a high spiritual energy, and a real sense of purpose together. It's a lot of fun. So it's a blessing.
That's incredible. The hope that comes out of what sounded like hopelessness at the beginning. And I wonder, just your own personal observation or thoughts on this, do you think that the energy that they have now for what they're doing in the United Methodist Church would have been as high as it was if their church that they were originally a part of had not disaffiliated?
So that's a very good question. So if the vote had flipped the other side, probably they would have gone on being in the church that they were. They probably would have been relieved that the vote was over, obviously, and that they could move on. And this, the concerns that they all had and the issues related to the split would have been over, and they could then settle down to being the church they called to be, which has been for the last many years, our denomination has been that's been the centerpiece of discussions. It's kind of derailed a lot of purpose and energy, depleted a lot of ministry energy over just dealing with the internal conflicts.
Right.
And
if all your energy is going there, you can't focus on your community and why you've been placed in a community when you're spending all your time fighting with about stuff. And that's been the tragedy to me, is we've been off center on mission, and it sounds like your church is very focused in terms of knowing why it exists, and that's exciting. I mean, I think that's that when you have that clear sense of purpose and you're driven in that direction to make a difference in that way, I think that's always an exciting place.
Yeah, exactly. And let me just say this too, that probably that holds true for what is now First Methodist Church Maybank. That part's over too, and they can be about the business that they need to be into.
And that's one of the things with this that I was talking to someone yesterday who is disaffiliated, a clergy person who's disaffiliated, and we were talking about this, and we've been friends for years, and we're saying that maybe now's the time that there's pruning that takes place. That image of in John 15 of Jesus is the vine, and the vine dresser prunes that which doesn't grow, and in order that it might grow more, prunes away the the unhealthy branches, but then prunes back the healthy branches to make sure that they grow more. And I think that image is a helpful one in this season, that maybe all of us can get clear about who we are and move forward in mission and stop spending all our energy fighting each other and getting very clear. Let's move forward for the kingdom, for a higher good, to do God's work in the world.
Well, I think I think you're absolutely right, and I think, in spite of the pain and the heartbreak and the deep grief that this has caused in many churches, I mean, there is a real hope that out of this, a real sense of new life and new spirit. I mean, I'm looking forward to it in the United Methodist Church myself, that for all of us, it will be, kind of a return to our roots, basically, of who we really are, and a new sense of inclusion, freshness, and an energy moving forward. I mean, that's the real hope.
Yeah.
And it would be very disappointing if we don't do that.
That's right. There's a real grieving going on with some people, and I don't know. I mean, it seems like there's some communities that there's no longer a United Methodist Church in that community. So there's a void in certain places. There are counties in Texas that do not have a United Methodist Church. So there are opportunities to plant new churches, but in the meantime, some of the folks that have been displaced by their church's vote and want to remain United Methodist are looking for, what do I do now? And obviously connecting with a new church start is one way. We've also found that people have connected online. We have a new member from Amarillo. We have members from Odessa. We have members who've joined from the Central Texas area. And we've just found that people have found an online community here. And Rohini, you're a big part of that with our online ministry. You want to share some of the insights you've had with our online ministry?
Yeah, it's definitely been a blessing, not just for our own community, our church community, but recognizing that as people are looking for this interim place to be, they're not sure what to do. They found themselves church homeless. And like you said, if they don't have this energized group already that's existing, that's wanting to do something more, but they still want to worship, they still want to find community that they're missing now that they're not part of a church, online has been a great space for them. And so I kind of wonder too, Vic, maybe in your experience with planting this community or helping as they are planting what is next for them, maybe what the challenges are specifically related to them. But for those listening that may think like, we're one of these 7 groups, or we want to be a group that is going to start something new, but what are we facing? Like, what are going to be the challenges or opportunities as we move forward and plant and figure out what that looks like?
We'll see a couple of things. One thing I want to say related to Clayton's statement about people coming in and being a part of this congregation online, I think that's a part of the future too, and I think churches like First United Methodist Church, Richardson, that does have the resources and the to be an anchor church for a lot of these folks that have, lost their, what they love near and dear for all their life. Now they've lost it. To have a real sense of reconnect, and that's probably, and y'all have already started thinking about this, of how we can actually minister to them in an effective way that's probably different, but still they know that they belong. Mm-hmm. They're in a community that cares about them and loves them, and they can participate, and they can have a sense of contribution and engagement as well. So to answer your question, this is all new, and so we're all trying to, we're like figuring this out as we go, really. I think I would hope, and my immediate kind of thought about this is the hope and prayer that when these people do come together, that there is a new energy and an excitement about the possibility of something new, whether it is a new church or at least an ongoing fellowship of intentional spiritual formation, possibly guided by a pastor or another lay person, or go back to the old itinerant preacher thing, or they gather in homes and they have Bible study and they pray together. Maybe every once in a while an elder, somebody will come by and serve communion. Those groups that bond like that have a high spiritual energy too, and they can do United Methodist work, and they can do United Methodist mission. It could very well be we have an influx of United Methodist home churches, and that wouldn't be a bad thing either.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, I think in a church like ours, most people don't really understand that the average United Methodist church is really the size of a Sunday school class. That it 30 to 50 members is not unusual for the size of a church. And having served churches like that, I know there's really important fellowship and important mission that they do in their communities. And if you think about churches, people gathering, whether that's 5 or 10 or 15 people who gather, whether that's in person or online, and they're forming community, and they're engaged and have a clear sense of who they are and what they're engaged in terms of their mission and their purpose. That's exciting to think about, how that could multiply, how you could have multiples of small groups like that really, and that was the heart of the Wesley movement to begin with.
Exactly.
So I think there's some real exciting possibilities about where we go from here, and it's like you said, reclaiming our roots, being true to who we are, and passionately pursuing that.
Right. So this little group that met on December the 4th, I said probably, I can't remember, I don't know how many were there, but let's say there were 20. When they got into the building in Eustis, there was 30. Last Sunday we had 81. So we're too big now for that building.
Wow.
So we're looking for larger space. So we might be joining with the First Presbyterian Church in Maybank, sharing space for this new venture. That's where we're going on Sunday for our chartering, because our little Eustis church won't serve us for that event. And the hope is that, and this is my hope, and this is the prayer, that the energy that's a part of this new church beginning stays a while. And that it continues to be compelling and attractive and energized. That's the whole point of a new church. A new church has a lot of energy anyway, and that's part of its appeal of bringing new people in. It's one of the key evangelism processes of our church. Anytime you have a new church start, it's true evangelism, because you're bringing in new people, and I hope that continues. That's the prayer, at least, for moving forward.
Great.
I love it. And like we mentioned at the beginning of this episode, hoping that this episode would be full of hope. And I don't know a better way to end than just knowing that this little church has already outgrown its space because of this energy. It definitely sounds like the Spirit is moving in all of these places. It doesn't have to be big, it can be small, but that energy that's there, and hearing the story that you've shared of what they've gone through and just in the past few months, I hear a lot of healing that's happened, and that's also my personal hope for all of this as this goes on, that we recognize that out of what feels like despair and hopelessness, there's healing and hope that is going to come out of it. So I really appreciate you taking the time to have this conversation with us. I kind of want to end just with one last question, maybe for both of y'all. For those that are in the midst of this and trying to figure out what's next because their church is disaffiliated or they're needing to find another space, another community to feel connected with, what are the resources available to somebody right now? Or what would you suggest they do right now to start that journey or continue on that journey?
For me, it would definitely be staying in contact with the North Texas Conference Office, and in particular, Owen Ross's Center for Church Development. Several people from the Market Street congregation have said how much they have appreciated the North Texas Conference supporting them through this, that they weren't alone, that they didn't, there's some things and the conferences will continue to be supportive of them for a long time. I mean, this is still a very young new church start. So the conference is still going to need to be there and be helpful in helping them in next steps of what it means to be a church. Even though these are competent leaders and have, been church leaders before, we're all still starting brand new, and all the infrastructures and all the things you do to, be a church, we're figuring out again. So, but the conference is key, and I mean, it's key to all of this, to hold us together, hold us accountable, and help motivate us to keep going.
That sense of connectionalism that you talk about with the conference, that's been a part of who we are. I saw that movie with Tom Hanks called Castaway recently. It was on, and I just started watching it and remembering that movie, and I thought that's kind of what it feels like right now for so many people who were part of a church that has now disaffiliated, and they find themselves at a place they feel like they're on an island by themselves, and they don't recognize where they are, and the sense of disorientation that you feel with that. There's a line in that movie where he says, "You never know what the tide's going to bring in," and that's the way the Holy Spirit works in our lives. And I think right now feels like Good Friday for a lot of people, that they've experienced a death of what they had, but God is a God of Easter. And so if you're in that situation right now, I would say, hold on for that promise of Easter. It's coming, and let us help you connect. If we can be a resource to help you connect with a church near you, or if our online ministry is a way that you can connect until something starts where you are, that's a great way that you can stay connected. Don't lose your faith because of this church vote. God is still God. And I would just say to people, Easter's coming, and resurrection is possible, and that hope that comes along with it is possible. So you never know what the tide may bring in. Something new and beautiful may emerge from all of this.
Thank you so much for the encouragement and for the perspectives, and really just filling this whole space with hope with these stories and all that you've shared. Thank you both for taking the time today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us for this podcast and the last episode of Season 7. We hope that you stay tuned for upcoming announcements on when Season 8 of More Than Sunday will launch. In the meantime, for any of the resources mentioned during this episode, you can visit FUMCR.com/morethansunday. Again, thank you so much for listening, and I hope you have a wonderful week.